Would you like to understand the truth of what's happening in the election between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, and you're not sure where to turn? Because we all know the media doesn't have the truth as their North Star. They're not objective in the slightest in the reporting. They're not trying to paint an accurate picture of reality. So where do you turn? You think maybe the polls. How did that work out for you in 2016? Well, I do have a method that accurately predicted what would happen in 2016. The Google and YouTube rankings, where we take a look at the candidates over time to see how they're trending and who is actually winning, who has actually got the attention of the American public. Because attention, my friends, attention is what you need to do anything in this world, especially in 2020 with the internet. You need to have attention to have impact. You need to have attention to sell your product or service. You need to have attention to get elected. So, with that being said, if this is your first time here, what's good? My name is Sam. For those of you who are returning, it's good to freaking see you. So these are the polls that I was referencing here. And we're also going to touch on at the end, we're going to do some a little deep dive in terms of the strategy involved for Donald Trump and Joe Biden when it comes to the internet, because you have to be able to win the internet to be able to actually win, especially if you're have any slight inclinations of like a conservative bias, because we know how the media is, right? So you have to be able to understand reality much better and be able to operate in reality much better than otherwise, because you have these forces that are getting pushed against you, right? So those, if we take a look at these polls here, we can see that these polls are from different organizations: CNBC, Harris, Rasmussen, The Hill, Fox, ABC, et cetera, but the thing that most people don't realize when the media reports on these, as say this from the YouGov, which is they give data, I believe, to The Economist. They're like, hey, the new poll comes out from YouGov, really credible organization, right? And they'll talk about how awesome like YouGov is and how they do things a little bit, but what they don't tell you is that there's a poll that is completely biased of 1,260 people that they are saying represents what 330 million Americans think. That teeny little bit is left out. Or that these are opt-in polls. Just the sheer act of requiring somebody to opt in to a poll influences their answers. Yesterday, we covered how that takes place. You can go to something called mTurk. It's an Amazon company, which allows you to create a poll or a survey, and you basically hire workers to come in and fill out your poll or survey. And that could be related to politics, or it could be related to elections, or whatever is happening. And so I created an account, and I did that just to test it out, right? And the only thing I had an incentive to do was click through as quickly as possible to get paid faster. There was zero incentive to be accurate or truthful in anything that I said in those polls. At all, whatsoever. None. And that is where some of these companies get their data. So you think that the collection of the data, there's something called the stratification of the data. That means collecting the data, and then you have to literally manipulate the data so that it looks like the population. Literally what that does is manipulates the data to look like the population, and then present it to the world. So you have biases on top of biases on top of biases. Like, what happens if you have a shit sandwich? It tastes like shit. Same thing happens here. You have all of these issues stacked on top of issues, and then when it is reported to the public through a completely biased organization called the media, I don't even like to call them the news, because the news implies that they're providing some type of value in terms of representing what is happening in an objective way in reality, but that is not at all the case. So I like to call them the media. That is why we created the Google and YouTube rankings. So my phone turns on over here. We have Google, which is, if you come over here, Alexa is a web traffic analysis company. And SimilarWeb does something very similar to that. That is a website that provides web analytics for businesses, right? Well, it's also an interesting research tool. These are the #1 and 2 most popular sites in the planet. And there's a tool that they give you to see search volume. So instead of having 1,260 people that's reported on a survey that is completely biased, you could just turn to the source where there's lots and lots of information. But before we do that, let's take a look at this. This is from Project Veritas, which is awesome, and you guys should check them out. Project Veritas, Veritas. So this is in regards to Jen, whatever her last name is, head of responsibility and innovation at Google. Google owns YouTube. And this is on hidden camera, her saying this. These are people within the organization, right? Because yes, we understand that collecting a shitload more data is going to be way more valuable. But what about the organization? We've seen in our Facebook rankings that Facebook is biased. We've seen in our Twitter rankings that Twitter's biased. And yet Trump is still destroying Biden. So this comes from the head of responsible innovation at Google. Elizabeth Warren, and this is a quote from the video. Elizabeth Warren is saying we should break up Google. And I like her. I love her. But she's very misguided. Like that will not make it better. It will make it worse. Because all the smaller companies who don't have the same resources that we do will be charged with preventing the next Trump situation. This is coming from the head of responsible innovation at Google. Do you think for a fucking moment that her beliefs don't come out in her actions and how she treats her team? I mean, apparently somebody thinks she's responsible enough to be in charge of a team. To create that bias in the company culture there? Yeah, no shit. Everything starts with a leader. This is also a quote from there. In 2016, we all got screwed over. I'm sorry, let me start over. We all got screwed over in 2016. Again, it wasn't just us. It was the people who got screwed over. The news media got screwed over. Like, everybody got screwed over. So we're rapidly been like, what happened? And this is a quote from the video, so the English might be off or just my reading. What happened there, and how do we prevent it from happening again? This is coming again from the head of responsible innovation at Google. We're also training our algorithms, like, if 2016 happened again, what would we have? Would the outcome have been different? Trying to manipulate the results of the American and the shape, the collective's perception of what is going on. Now, I've experienced this firsthand. I have another YouTube channel where I cover different compounds related to mainly medicine and other PED type of stuff. And I have seen the direct censorship of this many, many times, where a lot of these compounds, you can Google one called BPC 157 to get an understanding of what it is, or check out the channel down below. But BPC 157 is an amazing compound that can help with healing, and yet I see videos getting taken down around that. I've seen videos on other people's channels relating to different research getting taken down. All sorts of these different things are constantly getting censored. This is across the board on all social media, and we know the media is not going to report on that because they're actually aiding and abetting in that issue. So, with that being said, let's get into the actual data before we dive into a little bit of the strategy involved for the Trump campaign versus the Biden campaign. So what we did is use Google Trends to understand the search volume. So this is just people searching for Donald Trump versus searching for Joe Biden. So this is the data, but doesn't necessarily say that the data is not manipulated when somebody searches, right? If somebody searches for Donald Trump, the results are going to be manipulated, but the actual search is going to be tracked here, not necessarily what's going to come up in the search as we were just talking about. What's coming up in the search is clearly being manipulated on the back end in terms of the algorithms and whatnot. And so we looked for Donald Trump versus Joe Biden, and you can, and we did 3 different time periods, a 12-month, 3-month, and 1 month on Google and on YouTube. And we can see, this is over on Google, they have, you can see Donald Trump has a big lead. It's if we look over here, about a 3-to-1. So let's go over here. That means 3 searches for Donald Trump for 1 search for Biden. Come into the 90-day. Again, we have another. This is about 2.5-to-1 or 2-to-1, a little bit over 2-to-1, meaning 2 searches for Trump versus every 1 search for Joe Biden. Kind of interesting, right? Because when you look at the data, when this is millions and millions of searches across the United States. But that's not what's told here. This is 1,200 people, and they said Biden's winning. We're going to tell you, remember, we have a shit sandwich. What do you think the shit sandwich is going to taste like? Shit. Like, it's just obvious. So let's go on to YouTube, right? Because when we look at the 30-day, again, looks like Trump is actually coming down a little bit in terms of search volume over here, and they're getting closer. So maybe that's a good sign if somebody supports Biden, that he's gaining awareness, although it doesn't really look like he's gaining any awareness. If you just look, his is just flatlining, where the actual movement is in the search volume for Donald Trump. Let's take a look at the search volume on YouTube over the last 12 months and see how that looks, because I think Biden does a little bit better over here. So if we look over here again, we have the search volume at 70% versus of the total search volume, meaning out of these 2 terms, the total amount of search volume, Donald Trump has about 70% of that. This methodology also accurately predicted what was going to happen in 2016. Yet the polls said this was going to happen. But reality, when you look what people are actually doing, you look at their actual behavior, what they're actually searching for, and it's not 1,200 fucking people. You want to understand what somebody's doing when they're sitting at home on their phone. What are they searching for, right? And you have millions and millions and millions of searches across the United States. You get to see who is actually winning. And across the board, again, at the 12-month mark, 70%. The 90-day mark for Biden is the strongest, where Trump has 61% of total search volume during that period, and Biden has 39. So this is the highest I've seen Biden so far. We've been doing these rankings the entire month here, and if you look back, well, actually there was another time he had 39% right here. So this is he, in terms of out of all the other ones though, he doesn't get a tremendous amount of the search volume across the board, but he had this time period right here in May where he might have said something that gained a lot of attention for people searching for him. Also, he had something that happened right at the beginning of May, which gained him a bunch of attention. Now, when we go into the 30-day mark here, again, we see that he's a little bit closer. Look at this point right here. They're almost about the same in terms of search volume, but there's just a consistent lead for Trump. And this is exactly how it played out for Hillary and Trump, but Hillary actually was much closer in terms of search volume in 2016 when you looked at this. I looked at, you can check the channel like late last year, I did that video, and we can see the exact same results. So when we look at any one of these time periods, we can see that it's pretty simple who's actually winning, right? So the people in America are actually searching for Donald Trump versus Joe Biden. So let's take a look here. We went into incognito mode so that none of my searches are going to pop up here. We searched for Joe Biden, and then we searched for Donald Trump to see what would come up. And I found this is kind of interesting. So this is, it says secure.winred.com contribute. So this is the Republican website for collecting money like Blue Act, or the one for the Democrats, right? But when you search for Joe Biden, look whose ad comes up, Donald Trump. It says defeat Biden in November, make America great again. And then it says become a Gold Card member or stand against Antifa, right? And then Joe Biden's ad comes up here. But On the Trump side, there's nothing that comes up for, right? Like we have the Donald Trump website here, Wikipedia, Twitter. Over here we have the ads, then we have news organizations, Twitter, and then Joe Biden's site, and then Wikipedia. So it's kind of interesting to see that what in order to be able to have your ad come up on a competitor's search, there has to be a little bit that's intentional. There's a specific reason that somebody would do something like this to have their ad come up on when a competitor's. This would be like Walmart coming up on the ads when somebody searched for Amazon and having their ad pop up and then Amazon.com's come up right below it. There's a strategy that goes on behind this. And if you guys want me to get more into the strategy that they do, because we see the same thing on different platforms on like little bits and pieces of what they're doing, let me know in the comment section. Now, if you agree with spreading the truth, take a moment and share this video, because Google's probably suppressing it in some way, right? In some fashion, because when it comes to accurate information getting out to the public, you know it's probably accurate if the media and if social networks are suppressing it. So with that being said, share this video with somebody, press that thumbs up button. It really does help out with the YouTube algorithm. And I appreciate you guys. I'll talk to you soon. Peace.